Our next order of business and an information item, an update on the Portland Development Commission strategic plan. And if we wanted Kimberly to do it, we knew we needed to get it done today.
Yeah, next couple weeks. So good afternoon, Chair Kelly, Commissioners, Executive Director Quinton. I'm Kimberly Branam. I'm Deputy Director here, and I am here to provide an update on where we've been and where we're going with the new strategic plan, which is to take a 5-year period from 2015 to 2020. And because I likely won't be here when we bring this back to you, I do just want to recognize the staff who've been spending a lot of time in putting this together. So I want to recognize Justin Douglas, who's been doing a lot of the work, and Brian Lord, who's taken all of the public comment that we've received and captured it, which is invaluable. Robert Smith and Michael Gerton have done a lot of the metrics analysis, which is, of course, very important to setting our objectives, and then Lisa Norwood made the document look nice, and all of my managers have been really important thought partners in that, so I want to make sure that they're all recognized. And then Jillian Detweiler, who's also here from the Mayor's Office, has been a partner in this work. Let's see. Is it not? Oh. Okay, what do I push? Just that one. Okay, so as a reminder, our strategic plan sets our direction, and we produce our agency work plans, team work plans, individual work plans, and then budget on an annual basis and review our performance vis-a-vis the strategic plan. And so what you will see as we move forward is that the budget that's presented to you and our reports that come out should roll up into this. But it's also the case that this will be a living document. So in the event we see a year or two from now that there are key areas that we need to adjust, we can do that at the time. We are towards the end of a process that was kicked off in August with the steering committee that Mayor Hales convened, and we went into a contract with a consultant who performed an analysis of the work that we had done in the last 5 years, and who, in concert with their work for Greater Portland, Inc., helped us understand what some of the key assets and challenges facing our city and region are today. Based on that, we put together a framework which we shared with you and City Council in December. And since then, we've been busy finalizing, or not finalizing, but putting together a draft for public comment that sought to incorporate some of the feedback we heard from the steering committee, from you all, from City Council, and from our key partners. That was released in late January, and public comment has largely been wrapped up. We had 2 open houses, one here at the Portland Development Commission and one out in East Portland at the Immigrant and Refugee Center community organization, and received really thoughtful feedback in both of those forums. We also had an online forum for people who couldn't be there in person to give us feedback. And then, of course, we'd had a number of individual meetings with key partners and stakeholders to solicit input, and some of our advisors. We have wrapped up our work with our steering committee, so we had our 7th meeting and got direction from them, which I will speak to. And so the next step is for us to incorporate the feedback that we've received on the public document, feedback from you, and then to bring this to City Council for a report to City Council in May, and then to back to this body in May as well. So between the time that we brought the 40% draft to you for the board retreat and when we released the document for public comment, we met with a sustainability group and received some comment from them. So one of the things that changed was that in the vision, we now seek to be a healthy and equitable, globally competitive city, not just desirable. That was an important element that came through that conversation, and there were additional metrics in alignment with the Climate Action Plan and some additional actions around being focused on sustainable development as well that came through that. We have put forward 5 target industry clusters that we selected based on their ability to grow and produce high quality jobs, particularly with an eye towards middle income jobs, so those jobs that pay a living wage but don't require a bachelor's degree. And so those are, excuse me, athletic and outdoor, metals and machinery, green cities, which is how we're talking about our clean technology cluster, green development work, technology and media, and then healthcare. So the first four are traded sector, and healthcare is our first non-traded sector industry, but that is a key driver of quality middle-income jobs and obviously a key employment base within our neighborhood work. So we're putting that one forward as well. We did reorder our goals, and so Healthy Complete Neighborhoods, which is the body of work that represents our redevelopment efforts, our placemaking work, and is really the crux of a lot of our budget allocation and work that we do, is now the first goal. And we also added guiding values. So we now are very explicit about the fact that we need to be focused on who benefits from the inception of every project and program. And that was implied through the previous documents, but we wanted to make sure that that was clear in this version. We also talked about the fact that we need to continue to grow in order to reach our objectives. We need to have economic growth, physical growth in order to make sure that we are able to drive prosperity amongst all Portlanders. And then we talked about the fact that any kind of transformative work that we want to do will require new partnerships and deep partnerships, and that the collaborative, the work that we need to do needs to happen in collaboration. So those guiding values are clearly outlined in the 50% document. And then we did update metrics and included some baselines and targets. So as a result, this is what we brought to the public for comment, which the vision is that we become one of the most globally competitive, healthy, and equitable cities in the world. It's an audacious vision, but it's one that I think we have heard a lot of support for. Our goal, based on our sense of where we are today, is that we need to, in the next 5 years, focus on widely shared prosperity. So the goal is prosperity amongst all Portlanders, and that's measured by a dramatic increase in self-sufficiency. So those households who can really make ends meet and have the ability to have access to the goods and services that they need. And so that's supported by 5 key objectives: healthy, complete neighborhoods, which holds our redevelopment and placemaking work. And here we use neighborhoods intentionally to cover both our central city neighborhoods and our east side neighborhoods. So the idea there is that we need to make sure that we're thinking about Old Town, Chinatown, and Lentz. Each of them are distinct, but both of them are neighborhoods, and we need to make sure that we're bringing a comprehensive community development approach to those areas and not thinking about them in silos and in separate ways. The next is access to employment. So this is where we have our target industry work, our trade work, also our alignment with workforce development and making sure that we're not just growing jobs, but we are increasing access to those high-quality jobs. Equitable wealth creation includes our work with small businesses and growing businesses with a focus on making sure that communities of color and those in low incomes have the same avenues towards wealth creation that more advantaged populations have had. So that's specifically quality businesses and property ownership and development. The fourth area of focus is what we call 21st century networks, institutions, and partnerships. This was the idea that we borrowed from Brookings about the way that real change happens today, which is through a series of networks and people coalescing around pressing issues and addressing them in innovative ways, not necessarily through the same old institutions or top-down manner that had happened before. And so we have addressed some of the key issues, including regional competitiveness and workforce. Affordability is a big issue, both on the commercial and residential side, infrastructure and innovation. And so those are the key areas that we detail in here that we will need to work with partners. It's certainly not something that PDC can do alone. And then the fifth and a very important goal for us is that PDC model the values that we're espousing externally and that we model them internally. So we seek to be equitable, innovative, and financially sustainable, as you just discussed. So in sharing this with the public, we captured some of the feedback that we received. And so through the town hall and our open house, that's the online forum, the town hall was the online forum, and our open house, we captured how strongly the draft goal and draft vision resonated with people. And when we asked about the draft goal, there was a strong resonance and people strongly agreed. The vision less so, but I think that was based on the fact that the vision is a current statement. So Portland is equitable, globally competitive, and healthy. And I think people felt like that is not the case today. And so that's reflected here. It's not so much that people don't think that we should get there, because the comments suggested that in fact people really think that that's the right direction. So we feel that the feedback that we've received reinforces that this is the right vision and the right goal.
Can you tell us how big of a sample that was, please?
You know, I think there's about 80 people in this. Is that right? 70 people?
Thank
Yeah.
What about the ones who just didn't agree? What were their sentiments?
The people who strongly disagreed commented that they really felt that Portland wasn't equitable, it wasn't affordable. You know, so
So about the goal, not the vision.
Complaining about the current state of things.
I think they ended up complaining about the current state. You know,
They were really disagreeing with our plan.
I think they were disagreeing with the state of where we are today. Or, you know, there were also some comments, I think, just that reflected a cynicism about PDC and our ability to deliver on this objective. So I think that also came through.
Sure.
In terms of the objectives, what we found were that these really resonated with people. So within healthy, connected neighborhoods, access to high quality and employment, and equitable wealth creation, we had 65, 70, 80% of people saying that they're very important or important. There was less of a strong feeling around 21st century networks or our internal operations. But again, this suggested to us, and in the comments that we heard, that people felt like in general these were the right objectives, and that we were that we were striving towards the right kinds of outcomes. And so there were some themes, right? So we asked people to provide us feedback on the objectives, but then we also had discussions with people and have had a lot of written comments. And so there were some themes that are worth noting. One was the need to have increased access to affordable housing. There was a lot of comment about making sure that PDC really commits to community involvement and community engagement, that we align with other plans. So I think there was a sense, that this is moving forward at the same time as the comprehensive plan. Let's make sure that this is aligned, that we're not duplicating other efforts. And there were a lot of feedback that they appreciate the goal and the holistic approach that was being taken. On the other side, I think there were people who felt like, in fact, there were too many objectives or actions or metrics, and that we should simplify and prioritize and focus on the areas of greatest influence. So as we move forward to the next stage of this, we'll need to balance against those two areas, or those two trends, in terms of feeling like it's the right approach, it's audacious, and feeling like really it's too large. And I think as staff, where we come down on that is, in fact, that both are the case, and that this is an audacious plan, and that we're going to need partners in order to deliver on it, and that we recognize that. And so we'll be bringing that forward to you next month. There was some other specific feedback. We've received a lot of great and thoughtful feedback from our partners. So things like the East Portland Action Plan wanted to make sure that there was a measure about job or income growth. The Neighborhood Leadership Group really liked the use of neighborhoods in a more flexible team. Portland Business Alliance wanted to make sure that there was a sufficient emphasis on the link between large firms and small businesses. And then we got feedback from Brookings that they were pleased to see that Portland was wrestling with the idea of inclusive economic growth. So this is a sampling.
I see that affordable housing is the first one up there. Are these in any particular order in terms of?
Yeah, in terms of the comments that we received, affordable housing and community involvement were the top two that we received the most about.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So in terms of next steps, and this is the time that we'd like to hear from you. So in terms of next steps, we will be going to City Council May 6th, and then coming back to you on May 13th with the final document.
Well, obviously, I've been, on the committee, so I'm, more tuned to this potentially than the rest of you. The criticism that I've heard from city council members is it is too aspirational and audacious or whatever. my perspective on that is actually, I mean, in business, in what I do, if you aren't a little bit aspirational, what's wrong? So I think we should be, but we may still get that criticism when we go to city council, so we have to be cognizant of that. Any other comments?
Yeah, I thought it was really great. Especially, of course, I honed in on equitable construction and contracting. I think some of our objectives and then how we can actually measure them, we could kind of fine tune that a bit. And I'd like to be able to comment on maybe how we could do that a little more. And I don't know when the proper time is, but other than that, I mean, I think we can hit a lot of these goals and we can meet the outcomes if we're really intentional and they're clear as we're moving forward with the work that we're doing. So I thought it was really well thought of and good job, steering committee, whoever was on it.
And staff people.
And staff, yeah.
So you can continue to provide feedback whenever you want, so we can even follow up with you. You can share your written comments with us.
Yeah.
I mean, it's still an open document.
But it's starting to close, right? I mean, we really.
Yeah, so now's
Yeah.
the right time.
I think it's great. I'd rather be audacious and fail than timid and succeed, quite frankly. I think waking up 2 o'clock in the morning scared to death. I'm going on email company what you set out to do. I think, as I say to me, reading through this, listening to you talk today, I mean, this is the type of stuff that, why I continue to live here. Why I like bragging about Portland. So I applaud you. And if they want to criticize us, I'll come up and help you.
Thank you.
I have to say that, when I see that affordable housing is the thing that keeps, and I think obviously we have some way that we can help affordable housing, but at the same time, we don't have that is our core mission. And I'm beginning to wonder if that's in fact wrong, or if we need to somehow look at how housing is handled in our city so that we can have more impact. And I know this guy here is very frustrated about what's happening, and so am I. I think the whole commission is wanting to see more done on affordable housing, and to a certain degree, our hands are tied.
During the break, Tony came up to me, the question I asked about what % of the Housing Bureau's money is a result of the set-aside, and the number he gave me was 48%. And I wouldn't have guessed it was that high. I mean, it's just astounding. So,
Thank you.
more, faster.
Thank you, good work.
Thank you.
Before we adjourn, can I make a comment or something?
Sure, we're going to adjourn and move to the,
Can I do something before we adjourn out of the?
absolutely.
So one thing came to mind. Eric actually approached me after our briefing the other day, and he raised, I thought, was an interesting question. I thought about it over a couple of nights, and that was the notion of getting appraisals on properties that we're going to dispose of. And thinking about the discrepancy and listening to you talk about the process on the Old Town property that's going to Williams and Dame, and just the discrepancy between the appraisals themselves and, and all that kind of stuff. And one of the, and I didn't know who set that policy. I guess we set that policy that we have to have an appraisal. And with all due respect to the appraisal industry, many times it's backward looking. And I wonder if we shouldn't think about over the next months or whatever the case may be, is there a better way to set that benchmark? I know quite often as a firm, rather than getting appraisals, we'll get broker opinions of value that are much quicker, much briefer, and they're not 100 pages long, nor can you really go after anybody on them. But just food for thought.
They may be more informed.
Especially where we've got something that's a market rate deal as opposed to more mission, where we're doing a deep subsidy of something. Might be worth thinking about.
I mean, we'd be happy to initiate that conversation and provide whatever information you need. Right, if you look over a long period of time, and if you think about some of the more notorious deals that PDC has done and written in the press, you can, right, you can think about how the board might have gravitated towards, we want to see an appraisal, and it really got to, we want to see appraisal within the past 12 months. So I think that's largely why the policy is the way it is we're going to, anything that veers from some kind of data point is going to be criticized, or people are going to question, our motives, or who got it, what deal. And so, but the appraisals have been the kind of third party, kind of arm's length way of saying, here's objective value. And so it's certainly something we can revisit, but that's the context, and it obviously changes in different market cycles as well. So, anyway.
Thank you. So, the meeting of the Portland Development Commission is now adjourned. The members of the Portland Development Commission will now meet as PDC's local contract review board to consider the next item on the agenda. And that next item on the agenda is the findings in support of and exempting the Centennial Mills redevelopment project from competitive bidding. Resolution 7108, and we have Irene Bowers here to talk to us.
Hi, I'm Irene Bowers, and I am a project manager, senior project manager in the Central City team. And we are here to seek adoptions of the finding in support of and the exemption of the Centennial Mills public improvements from competitive bidding. And this presentation will review your previous board actions regarding the Centennial Mills project, why staff supports exempting this project from competitive low bid required by state law, and the projected schedule of the design build process. So as you remember, staff came to the board in these two previous meetings regarding the options for Centennial Mills moving forward, and just want to report back to you that the selection of the demolition contractor and the owner rep teams have been completed, and they're moving forward. So we would like to request authorization for an alternative method of contracting for another phase of the Centennial Mills redevelopment project. And staff believes that a design build team would provide a better value than your traditional low bid due to the complexities of the project. And I think we all know what a very complex project Centennial Mills is. Should the board allow staff to move forward, we anticipate this schedule. So we would like to release the RFP probably in the next week or so. We would have the proposals due in late April. We would then move forward to the design build teams, award the contract, and then notice to proceed. We're really shooting for phase one concept design, and I'll show you in the next couple of slides why we need to do that. So the first critical portion is to understand what the concept plan is to establish the public improvements that would complement any vertical development. We would be asking the development team to provide us with multiple concept designs based on the harshest plan that you saw, with and without the MPU staying. We would engage with the harsh team, the community throughout the process to gather input. These options would then be distilled into a final concept plan on based on whether or not the MPU remains, community feedback, and then of course the available budget. So some of the improvements would be the required greenway improvements, riverbank restoration, public open spaces that would occur around the buildings, and if budget allows, we'd also look at an overlook, ramp, floating dock, and a pedestrian bridge from the fields across Nadeau Parkway to join the two projects together. So what we're trying to achieve is to get to this concept plan at probably in October, November, so that we can submit that look at what we're going to be able I'm sorry, we would submit the concept plan for permits to Core DSL. And what that allows Core DSL to do is understand what we would be putting there as a design as we did phase 2 in Waterworks of next year. We'll be pulling a lot of pilings, the wharf, everything over the water, and so they need to understand what is going to be put into place because of this. So therefore, we are requesting that you adopt the findings in support of and exempting the Centennial Mills redevelopment project from competitive bidding. Sorry about my voice. It's been bad for a while. So if you have any questions, I'm here to answer them.
Thanks. Yeah, a couple questions. I assume you'll be coming back to us once you get the bids on the work and how they line up with, because you've got different phases of this and
Yes.
how they line up
Yeah.
with everything. So
Yes,
we can
and we
do a
would be
gut check.
returning to our PDC board as opposed to this board.
Can you talk briefly
Very
about
briefly.
how you intend to establish priorities over the various public components? And assuming that we will not have a budget that will allow all of those to go forward?
So working with the community, they were very involved in the 2006 framework plan. So we'll be using that as our guide, first of all. There's a lot of iterations that have occurred on this site for the last 8 years, 10 years that I've known about it. We'll be working with the Harsh Development team to see what their vertical development is and how those spaces work well within the design. So I think as we go through that process, we'll be checking in with the public. We will also be checking in with you. And the good thing about having a design build team is that we'll be able to understand the budget as we move forward instead of all the way at the end of the process.
So there will be your comments imply that there'll be a follow-on public vetting of those priorities and opportunity for people to weigh in, the public to weigh in again.
Absolutely, yep,
I think I see 4 different open house
Yep.
scheduled,
yeah.
and that's exactly what we want to see.
Yes, that's what we want.
Last question I have is you mentioned with and without the MPU, and I'd understood that they had vacated. So is there still an option for them to come back?
So they're vacating as of May 1st. They will go into a temporary site for the 2 years that the demolition is going to take. And we are looking at options still for their final home.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions, commissioners? Looks like we've got some public testimony.
No, I would just
Oh, I'm
say
sorry.
that I think this path of seeking this kind of proposal rather than just a low bid is the way to go for a project of this complexity. Get qualified teams in that know what they're doing and have them lay out the specifics and let us take a good close look at it.
Yeah, agree.
I just have to say that back in the 70s, when design build was devised, I've never had anybody argue with me about the fact that it was developed in the remodeling industry, in the residential remodeling industry. And in fact, my company participated in that. So I'm sort of pro-design build anyway. Trisha Graham, representing the Neighborhood Association.
Patricia Gardner, but I wrote it
Gardner,
really
what'd I say?
sloppy.
I'm
I
sorry.
couldn't have written that worse if I tried, so,
Yeah.
Pro District. Yeah, and just briefly on this topic, I 100% understand why you're doing design build, and you're perfectly correct about the idea of renovation and the complexity and trying to keep an idea on the cost. But, so, fine on this. But the one topic I do want to bring up is we still, every plan we're seeing is assuming the harsh plan right now. And now we're going to add in maybe the MPU, maybe not the MPU. And so you're basing all these contracts based upon a plan that the public hasn't talked about. And so and the first open house is July. We'd like to talk about the harsh plan, because, right now, you're setting yourself up for a year following that plan. And what I'm concerned about is, without talking about that plan that seems to be the guideline with the public, you're going to end up having a situation where people are going to throw temper tantrums saying, well, we didn't like that plan. And so, real easy, it's time to talk about that plan. If that's the one, that's the model that you're moving forward, better make sure that's the plan we're doing. And it deserves a conversation. And so I just kind of want to reiterate that, and I don't want to wait till July to have that conversation if that's possible. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. So would it be fair for me to characterize this that in fact, the public comments and the harsh plan as being part of that there'll be a public opportunity to critique that plan?
Yes, yes. And while there is a certain, and Irene, you're welcome to come back up so that you can correct me if I, the philosophy that we're moving forward on this is for PDC to take care of the demo piece as well as the kind of public realm of it and prepare it for development. It doesn't presume that the harsh plan happens exactly as drawn or whatever. Now, it does make certain assumptions, right? With the level of demolition, the preservation of the two buildings that we're going into demo with. It does make certain presumptions about that, but they're not as limiting, I think, as we don't think of them as limiting. They do still allow for a lot of options on that, but the progress that will be made by July will pertain mainly to demo. So I still don't think it's that late of a time in the process to provide public input on that. So that that would be my observation on that. The demo is almost what it is. We really are stuck with having to bring down a building, bring down most of the buildings, and that's the work that has to start happening. I'm not sure, but that would be different under any plan for the site.
And commissioners?
And then let me just respond on the MPU side. So we have been asked to look at whether the MPU can stay both through the demo, but also obviously in the long-term plan. We've asked our demo contractor, and we're going to ask this contractor to show us both. So there's no presumption that the MPU stays, but we don't want to jump in and assume that the MPU is going based on early conversations we've had. There have been, we can maybe talk about whether we can demo around it, and so that's all that's going on. Is we are just allowing for two different scenarios to be costed out or scoped out and costed out for the demo, and then for this.
So to follow on that, my understanding is we're approaching this as though we're creating a pad that could have multiple things happen upon it, with the notion that an awful lot of good work has gone in by the harsh team, but
Yes.
they and we both have a long way to go before we're saying that we're breaking ground on vertical construction.
Absolutely.
And should, for whatever reason, the harsh plan not come through, my understanding from the conversations I've had with staff is it creates options, which I think is a great way to approach this.
Yeah. No, we need to be able to look at multiple options and have flexibility on this.
I think that Patty's comments, I think a lot of people are going to have questions about what's the sustainability plan, how's that going to happen, affordability, design comments around it. My sense is there'll be a lot of interest and a lot of input that'll want to come forward. We just need to make sure to create that venue, and with plenty of time. Not that it's, we got 30 days, we're going to break ground.
No, I think we learned from the 2006 framework plan that there's a lot of eyes on this particular site, and there's a lot of people who are very interested in it. And I think we'll re-engage them as much as possible to try and understand, and I would ask either Will or Bruce to come up, but there is a salvage plan for the materials that are in there now. I've had preliminary conversations with SHPO on all of the historical documentations that has to occur before the buildings even get demoed. So there's a lot of eyes on this particular property.
My sense from the presentation that Hart's made last fall or early winter, whichever the case may be, was they've got a very skilled team, and I perceive that they're going to be more than happy to bring that team forward to those meetings to present their concept plans,
Yes.
answer questions,
Yeah.
learn and adapt from those as they move forward from those meetings, as
Exactly.
well as ourselves.
Yep.
Thank you. I see a nodding head over here.
I don't think we can take that as testimony, but. Okay, any other comments, questions? Take a motion.
I move that we so approve.
We have a motion, do we have a second? We have a motion and a second, any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, the ayes have it, motion carries. Let's see, the meeting of the Commission's Local Contract Review Board is now adjourned. And I believe we are complete, and we are complete 33 minutes ahead of schedule. Good work, Commissioners.
Thank you.
Biggest agenda, I think, in
That's the
few
longest
years.
meeting we've had in a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
2 meetings rolled into one.
Right.